All right.
Hello.
All right, and we are here. It is the Bunk Bed Podcast with Jason and Jack.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Mo is not with us today.
But he's in our hearts.
He is. He is. So, what do we got here, Jason? You came up with a nice list of things to talk about.
Yeah, I
What
thought,
do we want to start with?
well, some things I want to talk about. Slightly political, some not. Give us a little breather. Tax rates, tipping, Ocasio-Cortez, some Young Turks, and maybe some cryptids. Get kind of nuts for that, I don't know.
Yeah, just get a little
Monsters.
exciting. So, just a question, is tax rates something you want to talk about because you've been doing that training with H&R Block?
So we're starting with tax rates.
Yeah, we might as well.
So yeah, I've been doing H&R Block stuff, and not necessarily, like, it definitely helps, but I know a lot of, like, Shapiro stuff with flat tax rate, because I just think it's interesting. So many angles of taxes, it's just, it can get so, it's such a wide range. I don't know. I feel like a flat tax rate, which I, like, think might be good, is the underdog.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, to get everything clear, we're both probably, I'm for a flat tax rate. Jason just said he's for a flat tax rate.
But I don't know that much about it. But,
Yeah.
like, just from what I know, I'd be like, that sounds fair.
Yeah.
We all know some people like it fair, like Bernie Sanders. He says fair.
Fair is 90% on the top 1%.
We want a fair tax rate for the top 1%.
100%.
But, yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like 15% is yeah, people who are super rich, like, okay, that's like nothing. Like, we already pay 40, 30.
Well,
20.
wait, before we go into like actual tax rates, have you learned anything that like in this tax training, any like kind of like big tax write-offs that you or that you disagree with, or tax write-offs that you agree with, or just kind of like different ins and outs of the tax system that, maybe a 21-year-old would not know, like that doesn't work at H&R Block?
Well, I mean, I just started, so I'm not like an expert.
Yeah.
I know we mainly deal with like federal, states kind of a thing. There's a lot of like deductions, credits, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously there's like from 0 to like 100K, there's like
Brackets.
it's like the tax tables. So like if you're in between this and this, which is like usually in a margin of like 5 something, it's like you pay this, and like depends on your filing status.
Sure.
But once it gets like above 100K, I think it is, it's like that's when it gets wider range. Just basically, yeah. So, and a lot of the stuff I'm interested about is like the deductions and credits, like, and that makes me think of like incentives. Like, there's like education credits and deductions, like stuff with like a lot of children, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't know, because I know, like, it's when you think about it, it's like, okay, if you have like the earned income credit, if you have income but you're not super rich, and you have someone you have a dependent, you get some like deduction or credit off your shit.
Yep.
If you have a child, if you're going to school, especially now in today's age. But that sounds good, but if you think about the incentives, like at a broader sense, I feel like that could be harmful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, I know no one's like, oh, taxes, so I'm going to spew out children, but like, I feel like taxes shouldn't be, because it's like, we went through like 20 chapters, and some of them are just like nothing, but there's so much shit with taxes. It's like, we're all just, this sounds like some like Lenin, Stalin shit, but like, we're all like a cumulative. Why don't we all pitch in money?
Sure.
So that's why I'm for a flat tax rate. But I don't know that much about it. But
Sure. And like, I guess if you think about it, like, almost every tax system is that same way where it's like we're all chipping in, but we're all chipping in proportionally. So they say that that's fair. Like how is the counter argument would be like, if you're making $500,000 a year, say you're a doctor, like a successful investor, and you're making $500,000 a year, how could you say that 15% flat tax is fair compared to like someone making $40,000 a year or 30, being a janitor?
Yeah.
And like I'm not like, yeah, I don't know. I guess your thoughts on that, yeah.
Because obviously I know there's like the 0% tax rate, like that would be bad because I know like big government, but it's like we need to pay taxes. Like
Yeah.
I feel like from 0 to 10%, you need to do at least 10% because it's like you're part of the country. You have to pitch in, but
Yep. We want a good infrastructure.
like you have to find that 0 to 100. You have to find the in between. Like no one's for 0, no one's for 100 unless you're like clinically insane. But yeah, I guess it's all in your ideas of like
What the purpose of the government is and how many programs we should have funded by taxes.
yeah. But I feel like people don't know that much about it, and I certainly don't. But it's like people think the government is like our overlords. Like
It's just people.
yeah, and it's like this might be straying off the beaten path, but um like if we don't have like a federal government, like the government shut down, it's like all out anarchy, then it's not like people are just going fucking crazy. So I think you have to find that healthy balance. And I don't know, like one thing is like proportional tax rates. Like yeah, it sounds good. Like if you have more money,
It sounds fair.
but then if you think about it, like if I'm making, let's say I make 10K working full time as a college student, which I don't even know how much I made full time as a college student, but like, all right, someone's making no money, they put in like a certain tax rate. Okay, but people are making more, they put in more. But if you set it at a flat tax rate, if me and Donald Trump, like let's say Donald Trump pays 40% tax rate, which I don't know if he does. Let's say he does and I pay 10%. It's like, well, he makes more, so he pays more. But like, if you took my income, times 10% or 0.1, and then Donald Trump times like 40%, he would, yeah, times 40%, he'd be me making way more. But if you took 10% of both of ours, he'd still be making way more. So it's not like if we both pay the same tax rate, we're paying the same amount of money, which I think a lot of people think that is. It's like
Yeah.
if me and Bezos
Like,
are paying the same tax rate.
You're still paying a ton more. Like 10% is still like, it's still a percentage. So it's still a percentage of what you're making. So if you're making more, you're still paying more than the person that's paying 10% at $10,000 a year. Like you said, yeah. Yeah, and I think, I think that a lot of people don't really understand that it's still like proportional, whether or not like a flat tax rate is still proportional in the sense that it's proportional to the amount of income you make. 10% is bigger, blah blah blah. So I kind of want to move on to carbon tax. I know you're starting to get into kind of reading about carbon emissions, reading about just being green and everything like that. And it's a really kind of highly debated issue, especially on the Republican side. There's people that are saying that global warming's a myth. There's most of us young people, young Republicans or anyone like that is kind of disagreeing with that. What do you think about a carbon emission? I'm looking at an article right now that's saying it's about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They called it a Buffett tax on millionaires, and then she wants a carbon tax. So what do you think about that? I think they did that in the UK, didn't they?
Yeah, and that if you look at France,
Yellow Jackets, right? The Yellow Jacket uprising.
the bees are so happy about that. The Yellow Jackets.
Yeah.
No, but a couple things. I mean, obviously, because I was an anthropology major, so everything liberal. With the whole climate change thing, I hate how it's you believe in it or you don't. It's like, okay, no one thinks climate change is a myth in like the actual sense. It's like, okay, climate change, like the world's always changing. Like it's just a rock. The climate's changing, going around the sun. Things are happening. I think it's the debate on if if man is contributing to it
Those
or
carbon
not.
emissions are raising
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So are we like it's not just are you climate change? Are you for climate change? Blah blah. Are you a climate change denier, which is sad? It's are we contributing to man-made climate change? Is it so like it doesn't make an actual impact? Is it catastrophic? And so I think it's I'm not saying this to you, but like I just hate when people say, "Are you for climate change or not?" I know it's the rhetoric we use, but it's not just like yes or no, black and white. It's like how much are we contributing? Are we contributing a lot? Is it catastrophic? Is government the only entity that can stop it? Do we really need a giant like worldwide government to stop it? It's I feel like it's been really misconstrued, but anyway, that was just clarifying. Carbon tax, on the individual, no. I think that is really dumb.
I agree with you.
Because it's not like we have, as an individual, it's not like, okay, well, gas is going to go a couple, like, it's going to go $5, let's just say. I don't know the carbon tax, but let's say every time I go fill up, extra $5. I'm not like, all right, well, I'm going to go get solar panels. Like, no one, it's not, it's the availability is not where people can make the change. Maybe with corporations, um, which like I think it's like, oh yeah, corporations pay more and we help fight climate change, but maybe that's just I don't run a company. That's just me. So maybe people who actually run companies are like, look, like we're not made of money. Because when you think of corporations, you just think of a piggy bank, a bottomless piggy bank. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, my question with it, I'm looking at a list of countries that have carbon tax, and it's, probably all the countries you'd think: Denmark, Finland, Germany, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, blah, 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 and the UK. So I wonder what that money goes towards. Like, I know it's meant to de-incentivize you buying carbon-based fuels, and what you were saying earlier is it a thing that the government needs to get involved in? Is it something that a carbon tax could fix? I don't think so. I think companies like Tesla and, I don't a whole host of different green companies that are coming out. Green is kind of like a marketing thing that you can get ahead with in the economy today. If you have like like boxed water,
If
like
you
that
just
shouldn't have
if
got big, but it's boxed water because it's not a plastic water bottle. Like it's just like these different marketing strategies of just spending that extra dollar on not putting plastic or not, using a bunch of carbon emissions to produce is, becoming a thing that people want to buy into.
yeah
These companies are getting ahead because they are spending more on being smart about it. Um, so I think like leaving it open to that, leaving it open to the free market and saying like, well, maybe a carbon tax would just hurt everyone and just kind of questioning what it's going to do. Like, what's that money going towards? Is it going towards like actually reducing carbon emissions? Is it going towards research on carbon emissions? Because like NATO or whatever, yeah, like NATO and all that research that they come out with is usually contested pretty heavily, like every year. Like it's more catastrophic every year and it gets disproven. And like they kind of like pull back. Like they'll release this huge thing saying like carbon tax, their carbon's at like an all-time high and blah blah blah. But these articles are always like exaggerating. So like what is that money going towards? We need like better research. We need non-biased science going on. We need like, you know,
yeah I know it's like from individual standpoints. I know it's like I mean, this is what I thought of, and maybe I still think of today. It's like, okay, well, there's carbon taxes. We give money to the government, and that like it's like for every dollar you pay, we combat climate change $1 more. So it's like if we all pitch in this much money, like it's almost like Mortal Kombat health bars. So like the more money we put in, like climate change is less health bars. It's like we destroy it, and that just reminds me of like a lot of the climate change like funding. It's like, let's say, and like really stick with me here because this is like a far like reach, but if you're researching Mars and you look at the data and you're like, oh, there's no alien life, there's no water, okay, well, I guess we're done. But if you're like, okay, well, maybe there's something there, because if you say Mars, no alien life, no water, no nothing there, they're gonna say you have no more funding. Like, why? There, it's a dead end. Why are we gonna go down that way?
Sure.
But if you say we haven't found anything yet, but if we get billions more dollars or trillions or millions or however much,
Exactly, we'll find life.
yeah. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
that's like you're morally evil. It's just like,
Well, more funding equals more answers, and it's just like, when does that stop? When do we kind of come to a consensus about like where we're at with climate change, what part we play in it, and what actions do we take next? Because honestly, like it seems weird because I feel like if a carbon tax was implemented in America, I feel like a lot of people, at least a lot of young people, I feel like this may be kind of like, not the best opinion on it, but I feel like if you pay a carbon tax, I feel like some people would feel like they're doing something good. They're like, oh, I paid my carbon tax, I'm paying into like being green. And it's like, that's why we're taxing it, because it's not good for it. It's not good for the earth to be using these emissions. So it's kind of like this backwards thing where it's like people that are not as, into it are just kind of like, they're like, well, I'm paying my carbon tax. Like I'm doing my part. So I just think, and with like the uprisings in what is it, France?
yeah,
And like just what happened there is just insane. And I know it was with a lot more than just that, but I think doing the carbon tax, do you see that happening in America soon? Do you see that with like,
um,
it's hard to say with our president now and like with 2020, because I feel like Democrats have a pretty huge chance of taking the presidential candidate, but also like Trump may take it. Who knows?
um,
We don't know.
I mean, like I know what you said about feel good. It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of
Recycling.
like, I mean, maybe with like younger like people, it's like, okay, well, I paid a little bit of carbon tax, so it's like I'm helping save the earth, and like, and I think
Exactly.
it's like, just give, what is my money? I know it's easy for me to say, just like, what is my money going towards? But like, what is my little amount of money that's like, it's shitty on me, but it's a pebble to like these researchers or whoever. Um, like, how am I helping? Like,
Well,
taking some of my money, how is that helping you like in the long run?
what an article we were looking at earlier was not an article. It was a video of San Francisco. They hired four people at $700,000 to pick up needles in the street,
Like
and
drug
like
needles,
drug
not like
needles.
pine needles. They're not
Yeah.
Minnesota.
And
Yeah,
they hired, I think, I don't know how many people it was, but they paid like a hundred and what was it, $65,000 a year. I don't know if it was per year.
185.
Yeah, they said a number, but they didn't say whether it was a year or like I don't know if it's going to be a yearly salary or anything, but a high number nonetheless to pick up poop in the street for homeless people. That's all funded by taxpayers. So like to know that your money could potentially go to that, like you don't know which tax is doing what. I don't think there's very much separation. I think it's just going to either the state or the federal government, and then they have people that decide who needs the money and where. Um, so to know that stuff exists, it's just hard kind of agreeing with any tax. I mean, really any tax increase,
yeah.
really.
Um, yeah. I mean, I know it's weird how we went from taxes, the carbon tax, to poop,
Yeah.
but I get what you're saying. I know like individual carbon tax rates would be like, that's just. I mean, look what happened in France with Macron had to like bow down to the yellow jacket protesters, and like
Who's that? Is that the
uh, the the French prime minister, whoever.
Yeah,
The,
sure.
the guy, the
He
France guy.
he bowed down to.
He's basically like, he kind of, as far as I know, there was all those protesters
It was
protest.
a successful protest.
That's what I heard. Like Macron
Wow,
was like, okay, well then let's talk.
that's
But
awesome. That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, I'm not for like just burning and shit, but like
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
it was not the best protest, and like not by any means. You know, it was
yeah,
pretty violent.
it's not like an Antifa protest where you just punch like an old lady in the face. Like maybe these people were like actually like, look, you're taking our money for like nothing. Maybe that's what they thought, and they're like, the
Yeah, and it
only
was a
thing we
lot
can
to do with
do,
immigrants.
like yeah, I mean yeah. There's more than just carbon tax, but it's like the only thing we can do to get your attention is to like burn a city and like flip cop cars. But
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know, but I think there is maybe with like big corporations. I know when you think of corporations, you think of this big evil Google like overlord, but and like the people who are just like, if you like when I went up the North Shore, there was just like you could just see a plume, like just like a big white cloud in the sky, and it's like, is that carbon emissions? Is that the bad devil's gas?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it's like individual carbon tax. I feel like is just there's nowhere we can go. Where
Yeah.
else we can go from gasoline? But the corporations, it's like they have the money. Maybe if they showed us where, like, where would my carbon tax or the corporation's carbon tax like go to? Like, what is it being used for?
Maybe I think maybe a tax wouldn't be the best thing. Maybe like because I agree with you. I think an individual carbon tax, I hadn't really thought about it like that until you just mentioned it there. I think an individual carbon tax is crazy, you know, like just like expecting that from an individual, but like just like you said, the corporations that are just especially like corporations, you know, all these corporations that are using a ton of carbon. I think maybe requiring more just thought and more green initiatives going into that if they are producing it, or maybe a tax going to research on what that is affecting. Because I feel like taxing like because we have the most like cars like going around, and like that is a huge problem, like traffic and all those emissions from that. But yeah, I agree with you with the corporations. So let's kind of move on here. We've kind
Well, I have a carbon tax pro and cons
of
that I just pulled up, and this is just from economicshelp.org. Just carbon tax pros, makes polluters pay external costs of carbon emissions.
makes sorry.
Uh, in theory, enables greater social efficiency as we pay full social costs. That's just nothing. Raises revenue, which can be spent on mitigating effects of pollution. Remains to be seen. Encourages firms and consumers to look for alternatives, for example, solar power. And reduces environmental costs associated with excess carbon pollution. So some of that, yeah, is a concern. Some of that is just nonsense. Social efficiency, I don't think that's a reality. But
Yeah, I mean, like, I think everything on that list that I agree with is the like firms looking for solar power, anything that's not the individual. I
yeah,
think like bringing it down to the individual is kind of something that would not be successful at all. It would not look good, or it would not be good to the public. I don't think that would be anything that a large majority of the U.S. population would want. Um, but I think yeah, bringing it just to those large companies and firms that are producing that large amount of carbon, or maybe just like a smaller tax to like have them think about a different initiative would be
that's
good.
yeah, that's interesting. One of my anthropology professors, who's super left, by the way, you know, when you think of a leftist professor, you think of this, but she was talking about she was just talking with our class, and obviously she knows way more about this because she's actually in like solar initiatives, and she was asking us about it, and she's like, what do you guys think of the carbon tax? We're like, yeah, well, it's like what you would, it's like just the average, like, yeah, well, if big corporations pay it, like maybe
Is
they would
that
do like what was that?
is that what like a majority of your like the other students thought? Like I want to kind of know Just because I feel like most anthropology students are going to be more leaning to the left. Like I saw a
Yeah.
lot of people, I even saw people protesting, I mean, a lot of people protesting against Trump's tax cuts and saying we want higher taxes. Like I literally saw kids like protesting with signs that say we want higher
It's
taxes.
like, take my money.
And it's just like
You can send it to the treasury. You can
It's-
send it there for free.
Exactly. Just like whatever Tucker Carlson says, like, yep, sign a check to the US Treasury and just fucking send it out if you want to pay higher taxes. Like, I just don't understand that mindset where you think like just giving money out of your paycheck to the government is like gonna be for the greater good of America.
Yeah.
I don't think funding literally like half of the institutions we have in the federal government is worthwhile at all.
Yeah.
But like, what is the general consensus in a college campus? Like, what did you see in class?
Well, my anthropology colleagues, more left leaning, have like the same opinion as me, just like an average guy who doesn't know much about carbon tax. It's like, okay, well, we didn't really talk about individuals, but it's like, okay, well, larger corporations have the money, so they pay money to combat climate change. But and then we're like, okay, well, they pay some carbon tax, and my professor's like, okay, well, they have the money, so they just pay it, and it's like, okay, well, we'll just pay it and just keep doing it. We just keep doing it. Like, here's a 5%, 10% carbon tax. I don't even know what the percentage is. They're like, whatever, we're rich. What is it?
It is
For like corporations.
well, it says beginning January 1st, I assume in the countries, it says who prices carbon today. It says increasing annually by 10% to reach 100% by 2028. So what is that, a double by 2028 in price? So like $5 would be $10. 2028, that's not very far away.
That's scary. Like, that's not like some 2050 shit.
So
from
10% each year that just got implemented this year. And I mean, what is that doing? Is that putting pressure on the like companies to produce? Like, I feel like putting it on the individual is not putting pressure on companies to produce more eco cars like Tesla, you know?
Well,
And like it's putting pressure on citizens to, like, I don't know, it's just putting pressure on them. There's not really much they can do besides buy a fucking Tesla.
yeah, I think
Like, there's not much they can do. They gotta fucking drive to work. They gotta do, they gotta go to the grocery store. They gotta drop their kids off at school. There's not much they can get around. Like, they could ride public transportation if they're in a city. They could do this, that, and the other, like ride a bike, but that only goes so far.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like putting that pressure on the entire populace and saying, we're raising it 10% each year
yeah.
till it's double the price. Like, gas is $2.09 when I came into Brooklyn Park yesterday. Like, that is crazy cheap. And that's huge. Like, just being able to like save money on gas like that. And
Yeah, I think on the individual, and honestly, I think this is what it boils down to. You just apply pressure to the individual until their head is in the pavement. It's like, okay, well, I have nothing to do but riot. And
exactly.
But with
Yeah.
both corporations, it's like if you think about it from the broader standpoint, there's like why do we use like gasoline? It's because like we have a lot of it, and it's just the best form of energy.
They have more options.
Yeah, but if like renewable energy became like if it became naturally better, we would naturally move on to it. But when you force that, when you say
Technology needs to speed up.
yeah, gasoline is like is way more efficient and way cheaper, but you say no, and like with the corporations, we're gonna force you, and I don't know what like the exact corporation like repercussions would be, but like I don't think forcing it on like the lesser, like, because renewables are the lesser because they're worse, they're more expensive, and they're less efficient. Forcing it has consequences.
Oh, by far.
And
yeah.
it's like
And the thing is, like, while like those companies that are like doing those renewables, they're way less efficient, and they do have environmental impact. Like, windmills kill a ton of birds, like a lot of birds, especially in like Palm Springs. I watched it was like a public hearing, and some some woman was like screaming at this either a senator or someone in their state in California and just saying like, why don't we have more solar panel or why don't we have more windmills? And he's like, we literally had to like we killed so many birds that we had to just like break the law and just keep those there. And she's like, well, human lives are more important than birds, and and it's just like you're coming down to this level of like you're killing all these birds, blah blah blah. I know that's not that important. And like batteries, how efficient are batteries? How are batteries made? Like I know I heard something where like making a battery is not the most environmentally friendly thing.
Yeah.
And especially recycling batteries and like disposing of batteries is not the most, like we don't have the best way of doing that. And obviously like carbon emissions is probably worse, but we don't have that kind of efficiency yet, and we don't have that widespread use of it to the point where it's easy to do. It's, you know, not that you don't have to go out of your way to like charge your car, and you don't have to get a fucking wall outlet, and you don't have to buy a whole new garage just to like serve the car you have, because not
Yeah.
everyone can afford that, you know?
Yeah.
And like forcing that on someone, and like just if we just let that kind of play out, it'll happen naturally, because those companies are getting bigger and bigger. um
Yeah, and I think natural is the best way. Like people say, what happens if we reach peak oil? Like when you say, yeah, like oil and gasoline are good, but we're gonna run out. It's like, okay, well, and that's when the natural curve happens where we're like, okay, now we have to do it, and that's where human innovation comes in. I don't think forcing it really helps. But like what you said with batteries, people like they just say, well, batteries, like we'll just run out of batteries. We store energy, but like I forget who it was. It was he did he did TED Talks on like nuclear energy, and he was on Dave Rubin's show, and he said that in some city, if you used all the batteries you could, it would like run the city for like, and this is like just off the top of my head, it would run the city for like half an hour. Like we
oh
don't have the technology for batteries. Like yeah, it's like, oh well, batteries, you charge this and you just use it. It's like we don't have the technology for like the mass use.
yeah, and I think maybe a successful carbon tax that could be implemented would be something on a corporation, or any kind of entity that's not an individual, would be taking that money and investing it in research on nuclear energy and just figuring out how to do that right, because that is the clean source of energy. That is going to be the future of energy, because that's literally the only energy that can power a city that's not carbon emissions. Like we can't run it off batteries. We can't
Well,
run it off fucking solar power and wind.
what energy?
Nuclear.
Oh, dude, I could go into nuclear.
Yeah,
If you want to, I know where you. Okay, so let's
like
just.
I don't know much on nuclear, but I know that that's the future. If we can get the research done and the right type of, because obviously if something goes wrong, it's catastrophic, as we've seen in the past. But if we can get that, if a carbon tax is implemented, I think the only way I would be okay with it is if it was going towards research and implementation of nuclear energy.
Yes. So I did a nuclear presentation on nuclear energy. Obviously, it's just college level. But before we move on to that, I just want to wrap up. Individual carbon tax is a boo, and corporations carbon tax is like you gotta show us. You gotta show us where it's going.
You gotta, yeah, you
And
gotta,
there's some repercussions. It's not just you. It's not just throwing money at it.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
But so nuclear, people confuse nuclear energy with nuclear weapons, and nuclear weapons are bad. And then you hear the term nuclear, it's like, well, nuclear energy, like a power plant.
Is that a thing?
Well, like the weapons grade and like the
Yeah.
civilian energy grade are totally different.
Yep.
And we think of nuclear weapons, big explosion. Nuclear reactors don't blow up. Chernobyl didn't blow up.
It
Um,
leaked.
yes, and that was in the 80s or 70s. That was so long ago and is so poorly managed. But one thing I want to point out is nuclear is really low carbon. And on the chart, it's so coal's the top, natural gas, and then it goes way down to solar panels, hydro dams, and then the lowest two are nuclear and wind. Nuclear and wind are about the same
Solar
carbon.
panels are higher carbon than nuclear?
Yes.
how do those last like 3 or 4 produce carbon?
Yeah, that's the
Just
thing, because I know
I guess like
with
maybe
producing them.
yeah, producing it and implementing it.
Because the funny thing is, it's like when you make solar panels,
Well,
when you
producing a fucking nuclear energy plant has to like
well
obviously you're gonna produce carbon, but like
once you like in the process of making it, but once you get it going, it's like no carbon.
yeah,
I mean, you see like the big white plumes of smoke, and it's like nuclear energy. That's the devil's gas. That's the devil's farting. But it's like that's literally steam. Like that's the
yeah,
process. It's
yeah,
steam. It's not
yep.
like you have a nuke and you're like cooking over a stove. But I think there's a real disconnect between like nuclear energy and nuclear weapons.
No, and I think from an apolitical standpoint, I remember I grew up next to a nuclear power plant, and there's one just over in Monticello, and we were kind of in the blast radius, and that was something that I was like oddly into. I was like, whenever we went into like Monticello, I was like, oh, what if the nuclear power plant blows up, you know? And like I was young, and my mom, I don't know whether she was like worried about it or not, like, but we were like, if it did blow up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we would be in the blast radius at home, and it was just kind of like just this kind of like weird point of talking in my house when if it was just like a gas plant or like a coal whatever, you know, it wouldn't be a point of talking. So I think just to an apolitical standpoint, it's just something that's so like new and so you're right. Like you think of everything bad with nuclear just
Yeah.
because of what's happened in the past, and like obviously there's a lot of things that need to be thought about, need to be researched, need to be implemented like safety wise and precaution wise, but just kind of getting that knowledge out to the general public and then getting that research done is just going
Yeah.
to be the next step forward, I think.
And that's not to say that nuclear is the saint's angel, but like if you look at like Fukushima, like this nuclear explosion, there was like 30, 40 people who actually like physically died. It was like a couple scientists, researchers. The rest were like firemen, and the people who were affected by it. I've from
For
Michael,
generations.
yeah, but
Yeah.
Michael Schellenberg, he was talking about it. Who's like researched it a lot. He did a TED talk on it. He's like there was a 1% mortality rate with thyroid cancer, and that was like the biggest thing. I mean that's
Really?
just what he said, but I know with like Fukushima, it's like all these people died from Fukushima, like Fukushima the nuclear reactor, blah blah.
Yeah.
It was like an earthquake tsunami, and so there was
It
like
was.
I want to say like if any 2 people died from the actual thing. Yeah, I don't even think there was anyone
Well,
who
maybe
died.
maybe we don't build them on the coast in Japan.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
I
like
it was either I think it was on the coast. I looked at Google Maps. It was either on the coast or very damn near to it, but it's like someone dies in a nuclear reactor that is caused from an earthquake and a tsunami, and it's like, look at the nuclear reactor did it. It's like that was literally like
maybe
double.
maybe it was the earthquake tsunami.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Long Mile Island, the nuclear disaster in United States, 0 people died.
Yeah.
And so, and if you look at it, it's like a quarter of our the U.S. energy production is nuclear.
A
And
quarter?
yes, I think so. Or no, it's 20% or something like that from like last year.
Really?
And what you said about like your family and then the nuclear plant in Monticello, I remember in the Rogers Middle School, they said their plan if the nuclear reactor melts down and explodes and Chernobyl type Chernobyl-esque disaster. They literally said, I swear to you, they're like, we're gonna put you on a bus and send you the opposite way. It's not gonna do anything, but it's the best we can do. And it's like, the fuck are you talking about? What are terrorists gonna go in there and press the buttons like Call of Duty, like when you're defusing the bomb, it's gonna blow up? It's like, no, terrorists can't go into a nuclear
Reactor.
all the safety procedures are so redundant. They're literally redundant. That's what, like, when I researched it, which I didn't do like too much. I just looked at a couple top sources. It's literally redundant. All the nuclear waste, I think from either the world or the United States, I want to say the world, they put it in these containers that don't leak or don't crack, and most of the time they can be like recycled. But you could take a football field and put all the nuclear energy waste, and it would go like 30 feet high. People are like, nuclear waste buried all around. It's like, it's not that much. It's like less than landfills, and that's not that much.
Well, yeah, no, landfills are like we could put, I forget the figure, but either way, not that much for landfill space, and then nuclear energy is significantly less than carbon emissions. Like if you think about carbon emissions and any of that, like that has a huge environmental impact, and like figuring out what we need to do with nuclear waste is also something we could do with like a carbon tax or whatever. Like figuring out where to put it, what to do with it, what it has impact on like environmentally and around. And the interesting thing is I was an environmental science major, and like we didn't like learn that much about nuclear energy, and
Big
like
surprise.
and granted I didn't go that far into the program, but like I feel like that's definitely we definitely talked about like toxic waste from like landfills, and a lot of the jobs you get coming out of that field and out of that major are going to be you're going around taking samples of just groundwater and just the ground kind of around dumps and landfills, and you're just making sure that the water table isn't affected, because a lot of them just have like little barriers so that the water doesn't leak into the water table. But if we're, because the research is kind of done on that, so obviously you need to learn it when you're in college. The research is kind of done. We kind of know what to do to avoid that, and like what we're measuring to know like what's a good level. We need to do more research on like what to do with that nuclear waste. Like, what if we just like took out that fucking thing and put it in a nuclear power plant? Like, blah blah blah. Like, I think a lot of environmental scientists could start getting into this and start figuring out the environmental impacts and like doing their research on that, rather than just kind of like perpetuating this trash is bad, carbon is bad thing. Like we kind of know that that's not good for the planet. We kind of need to move forward from that and think about what's good.
Yeah.
Like what's the next step? Because it kind of just seems like you were saying, it's very like with that research, but this is very redundant what we're hearing. Like blah 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 blah. The world's gonna end in 10 years from fucking flooding.
It's stigmatized.
Yeah,
It really
it is. It's very stigmatized, and it's sad to see, just because it seems careless the way that they're talking about it, and the way that people are just kind of labeling people as climate deniers. I feel like if someone heard this podcast or heard what we're talking about, they'd
be pulled back. They'd be like,
yeah,
climate change is real. You guys
they'd be
for carbon, the devil's gas.
Yeah, and I feel like it's nice to hear that what you were saying, that carbon tax is kind of like debated at least in Duluth on campus. Like it's not something that's huge, like that people are rooting for carbon tax. I feel like that's not the case in campuses maybe in Europe, or campuses maybe in more liberal cities or states. But it's good to hear that people are kind of debating that, and knowing that might not be the next best step. But yeah, it has become very politicized, and just become very black and white when it's not black and white at all. Like it shouldn't be something that like a layperson can listen to, where someone's like actually debating it. And like I feel like most apolitical people, if they hear anyone kind of talking about something that's not carbon emissions are terrible, they're immediately thinking that.
Yeah.
It's just like they're like, holy shit, this guy's like alt-right. Like
Yeah, this guy's like when you see like carbon emissions are awful and nuclear is awful. The only way is renewables.
I feel like most people feel good reading that. They feel like they're doing something. They're like, oh yeah, fuck those people.
Yeah,
and it's like
yeah, and I'm a person who's like, if our roofs were solar panels, like that would help us all. We can make our own energy, sell it. Like that would be awesome.
Yep.
But Yeah, the reality is the goal of sustainable energy is to cut out fossil fuels. And imagine if we, because that's the goal. Like, let's say you take 10% and like for like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change or like the UN climate change stuff, they're like, okay, our goal is this sustainability. That's taking out fossil fuels. So let's just say 20, 30 years down the line, we're down to like, all right, we cut out 50% carbon emissions, 50% fossil fuels. Like, what will that do to us? Like, think about, I know Alex Epstein, I think it is, like the more moral case for fossil fuels.
Sure.
It's like,
Yep.
yeah, renewable energy, like it's renewable, it's clean. Fossil fuels are evil. But it's like, imagine your life if you took out 50% fossil fuels. It's like, that is so,
Well,
that
and,
is
and
so
most people don't.
anti-progress.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't understand what that entails.
They just
And like,
think it just makes you feel good. You're making a difference, but you're doing worse.
and it's easy to kind of stand on that pedestal and say like we need to do this now, otherwise like the world's gonna regret it. And they may be right. And but the thing is, this isn't just like the USA fighting for this. This has to be the whole world. This has to be like every third world country that is fighting for fucking footing and fighting for like just any source of income, any source of progress in their country, and just taking away that chance of just like a little bit of progress and saying like, all right, so maybe they have a ton of oil. Mostly Middle Eastern countries are in that case, like where they have a ton of oil and they're not doing the best with the way with the money they're getting from it. But say like country in South Africa, country in Africa, or South America, country in Africa finds like a ton of oil in there, they're suddenly brought up from the third world. It's like, do we, like what is that moral to just take that away, And these countries like China and India, they're producing a huge amount of carbon emissions and they all have to comply with the US, they all have to comply with Canada, and the UN, Trump pulled out of that because that wasn't happening. No one was like, everyone was just like, oh yeah, let's fucking do it. And no one was doing it. No one was, and like, most of them just said that they're going to level it out in like 20 years. Like, I think China's agreement was to level it out by 2030.
Yeah,
like, they would keep increasing. Like, it was just like a decrease on their increasing of carbon emissions. And it's like, okay, like, it is progress, but is this the road we need to go down? I don't think so, because it's not working. No one's really paying attention. Like, no one's paying attention to it on a global scale. No one's, paying into it. No one's doubling down on it. It's just not the right way to go down. We need to kind of really take a step back and kind of like look at the whole thing and think, what's going on here?
Yeah.
What's the next plan for action?
Yeah, I really think it's a red herring. Because I know China is like, by 2050 or 2030 said they would reduce their carbon emissions by this much. But if you look at like what it's actually predicted, it's the same amount. So it's like, look, we're gonna do this by this year, and they say like it's a big goal, but they're already projected to do it. And some Middle Eastern country,
yeah, it's already projected that they'll reduce it by that amount.
Yeah,
so they're really just like not doing
turn
anything.
They turn their documents to say, all right, well, I'm on your side, and like you're fine. And some Middle Eastern country said like it was so lazy. It was something along the lines of like, we're gonna like eventually we're gonna reduce our carbon. You literally have to say anything. And to the nuclear argument, like before we close that, if you compare like nuclear is infinitely, if you put coal, petroleum, biomass, and natural gas on a scale of like deaths from air pollution and deaths from accidents, it would be like big charts. Nuclear you could barely see. It's the carbon, I know it's like, well, solar, it's just a panel. It doesn't have carbon. Well, there's more that goes into that. It has like the same amount of carbon. So nuclear is the safest fossil fuel. It's the lowest carbon, and it produces so much energy. It's like, it's not just when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. It's like a base load.
Yep.
So, I mean,
Yep.
I don't know, if we want to end off the carbon or the nuclear discussion, I think nuclear is expensive, don't get me wrong. But I think it's like the perfect, it's like a hybrid. It's like it has the efficiency of fossil fuels, but it has the safety of renewables, and I don't think people look at that. And it is really expensive, and I know it's like more expensive to like rebuild plants when updating old ones could be cheaper, and we might need government subsidies. I know that's like
Yep.
that's
Yep.
a red flag for a lot of like conservatives. But if we can subsidize renewable energy just to tip fossil fuels on its ass, I mean, like, why can't we do that? I mean, maybe not subsidize it, but I think nuclear energy like really is our future, and I think we need to stop praising to the extent we do now renewable energy and stop shitting on fossil fuels like to the extent we do now. I think we just need to look at it from like a totally unbiased standpoint and say, okay, fossil fuels has this bad, renewables has this bad. Nuclear is like literally in the middle. Like it is the perfect energy source.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting to think about like who would, I feel like thinking about like politically in America, who would be the potential party that would bring that about? Because I don't really hear about it on either side of the aisle. Definitely
Nuclear?
not. Yeah.
Nuclear, okay.
Yeah, I mean like I think most people are just kind of, especially on the conservative and libertarian side of the aisle, like I hear a lot of people just talking about how politicized this argument has gotten and how most people are on the same page. They're just kind of arguing. Most conservatives are just saying like we're on the same page, but like we're kind of reading different. We're reading between the lines and kind of trying to figure it out. And you guys are just kind of yelling at us. We don't really hear a lot of conservatives saying like this is something that could be potentially good. I kind of hear a lot about like bringing on scientists that are just debunking a lot of studies that have came out that are just very pro green and pro like carbon tax and all these kind of like crazy initiatives. So I kind of be interested in thinking about just who's going to be the side that's going to bring up this nuclear argument or like what's going to be happening in 2020 or 2024. Just with that, it's interesting to see or think about maybe in 10 years, 15 years where we've gone from this.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of in the muck and just kind of like all over the aisle with this, and it seems like something that's relatively new to the whole world. Like it's definitely something people in America have been thinking about, like everyone fucking recycles and blah blah blah. Like it's definitely new to like the whole world, and I just am interested to think about where we're gonna be in like 20 years and like what kind of power we're gonna be getting and how much carbon is gonna be used. Cause it definitely like if we cut it out now, not gonna be good, but maybe 20, 30 years we could cut it down a good amount.
Yeah, I mean, I do think like we look down the line with fossil fuels and like the negatives, and we look like down the line with renewables and like the positives, and that's like all fine and dandy. But we need to look down the line with like nuclear energy. Look at the positives. Fossil fuels has the efficiency. Nuclear energy, or I should say, renewables has like the low carbon, and I think we just need to look at the positives and like compare it really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's really interesting. I don't think obviously like fossil fuels and renewables are touched upon. Like I have heard the word renewable so many times it's like a curse word. I literally want to erase that out of my head. But I think nuclear energy is, if I heard that on the news and someone talked about it without screaming about like nuclear destruction, I would be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And it's a breath of fresh air, especially just in the debate that's going on right now. Um, it looks like we didn't talk about anything but taxes and
we
renewable
talked
energy.
we talked a lot about carbon taxes
Yeah.
and
We're
energy.
at 54. Do we wanna end
54
it on
minutes.
that? Yeah.
We could end
This could
off
be
on a we could
this
end
could
off on a fun note. We could do cryptids or Alexandria Ocasio Cortez.
let's do cryptids. I feel like that'd be short.
Okay, all
Short,
right.
nice
So
topic.
cryptids. Look up a list of cryptids or something. Anyway, so cryptids are like the ancient, unique, these like monsters, like the Loch Ness monster,
Oh, there's a bunch of
Bigfoot.
them, dude.
Yeah, like the Yeti, all these different things. And I think they might go into like folklore. I think cryptids are
Big time.
fucking nuts.
So there's the chupacabra. I'm just naming ones that I kind of recognize. So it looks like this a few of them look like they're the same, maybe from different cultures. The Loch Ness Monster is the Alta Mahaha, I don't know. Chupacabra, we got the Bigfoot, Kraken. Yeah, I mean,
So
we don't, what ones are kind of specific to America? I mean, I know
definitely Bigfoot.
Bigfoot, yeah, Bigfoot kind of in the northeast or in the northwest.
In like the woodlands, I'd
Yeah.
say. I know Loch Ness Monster is like, Lake of Loch Ness. Yetis are kind of in the snowy regions. But
I
I don't know. What do you think? Do you think any of these could possibly exist? I mean, do you think there
Well,
could be a claim?
some of
Like,
them have real animal pictures like off Google Images. So obviously like I'm interested in those. I'm looking at the Chupacabra. I feel like that sounds like a normal animal to me.
yeah,
Um
I forget who I heard from, but someone said they actually saw uh chupacabra or whatever you said. They were like, yeah, out in the dark, and I saw this and this and this, and it's like, how can like that is such bullshit, but at the same time, it's so fascinating.
it looks, I mean, from Google Images, it looks like a rabid dog, and they just drink the blood of livestock. I mean, it sounds like a fucking wolf that's like hungry. They're all skinny. I mean,
Yeah,
like I think things like maybe the Kraken. I can almost believe in the Kraken.
because like giant octopus, giant squids.
They're
That's already a
fucking
thing.
crazy.
Yeah,
They're absolutely they can fucking blend into there was a video I saw of like I don't know if it's giant squid or octopus or what blends into their environment, maybe both of them, but they have like active camouflage and they threw one on the ground of like a black and white tiled floor and they blended in with the
yeah.
black and white
Like
tiled floor. It's
blowfish too. They're
it's
crazy.
absolutely insane. And I think the odds that like the Kraken exists is higher than Bigfoot, you know?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I
And like
mean,
there's another one. Oh, what's the big shark?
megalodon. Megalodon was a thing.
Yeah, Megalodon was a real shark. I mean, that's not much of a
Yeah.
cryptid, but I think that could very well be out here, you know?
Um,
I want to believe, you know? I want to believe that most of these are real because it's just fun,
and
you know?
I know, like the Meg, the new movie about Megalodon. It was adapted from a novel, and like in the Mariana Trench, deepest point in the ocean, there was it actually like connected to an even deeper part, and there was a megalodon down there, and we know more about space than we do about our own oceans. We only know 10%,
Yeah.
and a little part of me is like, we only know 10%. There could be like a leviathan, there could be a kraken, there could be a megalodon down there, like these big sea monsters.
Did you read Leviathan?
No.
Oh.
But I don't know. And I think like a lot of these are bullshit. I'll be honest, but it's just like folklore. But it's just so interesting. It's like the human imagination really wants it to be alive, and
Well,
I sure
and
as hell do.
it's interesting because like most of these aren't just like people like in 2004 like coming up with this like crazy idea like they saw something. These are all like the Jersey Devil. Like these are all like huge local stories that have kind of just lived on and just passed on. Um, and I remember I watched like especially on the Jersey Devil, I listened to a podcast I think of just it was kind of like a folklore podcast and they talked about all these different cryptids and they had one on the Jersey Devil and I was like I got done listening and I was like fuck, the Jersey Devil's real.
Yeah.
And it's like if you go to Jersey it's like it's not fucking real, there's no way, there's people fucking everywhere, blah blah blah, but like there's more trees now than there ever has been and like I don't know if there ever has been, but like very like in human population, I think there's more trees now than there has been since humans have been on the earth.
Yeah.
So like while there's more humans now than there ever has been, it's like they can fucking hide in the trees,
Yeah.
Bigfoot can adapt.
But here's the thing: we like in the Amazon, it's like there's so much just shit in the Amazon.
Yeah.
There's so much life in the Amazon. It's like maybe we'll find a cure for cancer. Like there's a magic plan. There's so much like I bet if you just looked up,
There's
like,
people finding shit all the time.
yeah, like lists of insects, and you look at the thousands of insects that are found that you've never heard of, and if they found that, like, some little mosquito or dragonfly, some special subspecies, I feel like we would have found a 12-foot tall.
Well, the thing is,
You
a
know
lot
what I
of
mean?
those, yeah, I was watching, I found this YouTuber, and I think he went around in South America, and he was like kind of a researcher, and all he did, he was trying to find new species, and he had like um led the science on finding new species of, I think it was insects or maybe spiders or something. And all he did was go around the fucking, he'd go on trails. He wouldn't even go like off trail that often. And he just fucking like bat trees and bat like leaves and different logs and shit and just like have this net and just kind of shake it until he just got insects. And he'd find fucking new ones that have never been found. And it's like, if we like, I don't know if we need to have like, I don't know if it's something we need to just go send people out doing, but like eventually people will do it. Like if people went out there and fucking, and half of these people or half of these animals obviously would not want to be found, and they're bigger than an insect,
Yeah.
but it does leave up some suspicion, if like all they're doing is just batting shit on the trees and finding new insects, like we haven't found those yet. It's 2018 and they're,
We were
could be
gonna
out
find
there.
something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We would have found like fossils, that sort of stuff.
Well, a lot of these things do have like vague, very vague, like kind of like evidence. Otherwise,
And
they'd be kind of like,
yeah, and I definitely, maybe it's just in North America, but a lot of it is like Bigfoot. Like, and there's a lot of like fake Bigfoot stuff. Like I remember watching this documentary or some video. This guy had like,
just walking.
yeah, like the one where it's
Yeah.
walking and it
Yeah.
turns and you can see like the knee.
He just
move,
looks at you, yeah.
and it just freeze frame, and it's like Pink Panther song plays or whatever. But
Yeah.
you can see like the knee joint moves weird. And it's like maybe it's in a suit, and like one guy had like a preserved Bigfoot, and it was like, you can't touch it, but this is the real Bigfoot, and it turned to be fake or something. It was wax or some shit, but it's like just that human imagination. And I know I watched a trailer for some Bigfoot movie, and it's like just that fascination with what if you were out just in Russia, just there's so much land, or Canada, out in the wilderness, and it was just Bigfoot. Like I think that fascination really drives it, but I do think um, like saltwater, like deep sea creatures, they could, but I don't think Bigfoot really.
Yeah, I think mammals are kind of out of the equation for me.
Yeah,
I think most mammals are kind of like, maybe someone deep in the, like it's very interesting because like I still want to believe that maybe because it's very interesting that a mammal that maybe looks like a monkey or just some like mammal that we haven't seen exists, and it's a very low population. Like that's very interesting to see like where that came from evolutionary, if it does exist, or if it's progressed or whatever in evolution. But I feel like that's kind of most of mammals are found. I don't think many new mammals are being found.
yeah,
Like definitely with like cephalopods and like fucking insects and all that. Those are being found because, they're, I don't know how much they're fucking breeding, but like they're everywhere.
yeah.
And then yeah, with like aquatic animals.
Yeah, I mean, like with like land, I mean, with our flat Earth, we could just keep walking and we'd find some.
Yeah.
But deep in the ocean, that's another story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just try going down in the depths of the ocean. Like the pressure will kill you, and it's like, I mean, I know like you're not gonna. Someone would have found Bigfoot, and there's so much there's not a clear footage of Bigfoot. It's always just sketchy or something's. It's just that perception of like, oh, that's a maybe. But just the fact that you can film some in your backyard, like out in the sticks of Alaska, and say, oh, maybe. But you can't just film, oh, maybe, in the depths of the ocean, like in the Mariana Trench.
Yeah. And like the crazy thing is like those animals that have been found in those deep pressures of the ocean are fucking crazy. Like
Yeah.
they're like literally non-human. they got like the angler fish, and they have like just like weirdly proportionate bodies, like teeth
They're
and everything.
monsters.
They're literally monsters. They're not of this earth, and for sure there could be some crazy stuff down there.
Yeah, I don't know. Cryptids, man. There was I don't know. That's just I think there is something to that. The cryptid connection, especially like Bigfoot, like the land ones. I mean, definitely with like Krakens back when people were started on ships, like big ass ships going around the world. I think there's something with the human imagination and like the hope of that, like finding it. Just because it's so fascinating. Like, what if Bigfoot was real and you saw it on the news? That was so
I
nuts.
wonder how many, like, if any cryptids have been like actually found. I mean, would they be a cryptid at that point? Like, or would it? Yeah, I mean, obviously, it would be a new animal. I guess it'd just be interesting to see if any cryptids from the past have been like found, and they're like, "Oh shit, this thing is fucking real." You know,
Yeah, like what if one dude, like, just out in the sticks, like northern, like just out in the sticks of Russia, Canada, Alaska. That's what I think of.
Yeah.
But and they shot like someone's fucking with their dog or their cattle, and they just saw a blur in the darkness, and they just shot it, and it was Bigfoot, and they freaked out and just burned it, and the next day they were like, "Fuck," like, dude, no, think about that. This dude is like, "Yo, I have a dead Bigfoot," and they burned it or something. Like, just imagine the
How many?
No, I'm serious. Like, imagine, because shit is so boring. I mean, not with like Trump, but like the news. It's like another person was killed, which is like, obviously it's terrible, but it's like it's just so boring. Imagine if someone was like, we have like 4K footage of the Loch Ness monster. Everyone would be like, "Yo, what?"
Yeah,
That would be nuts.
it'd be like finding life on Mars. It'd be like equivalent to that kind of news.
That shit would be on YouTube Rewind. You would get so much views.
Oh yeah, big time.
But I don't know, cryptids.
All right, and that's a wrap for, is it episode 2?
Episode 1 or 2.
Episode 1, yeah. Our first episode is in the vault. It might stay in there.
There definitely wasn't one before that.
Yeah, this is the
But,
first.
We talked a lot about taxes, carbon taxes, renewable fossil fuels,
Nuclear energy.
and we ended off with something. Did you end it?
No. I
okay.
just tapped it.
We ended off with cryptids, something that's definitely real.
Yeah, so I hope the audio quality is good. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.